Good.
Nice.
All right. I'm sorry, what was that? Someone had a question?
Yeah, I said, yeah, sorry. Where will this be posted?
I'm not sure. Lauren, do you know?
Yeah, we're actually trying to get the YouTube channel back up and running because we apparently do have a YouTube channel for CMA. It just hasn't been really well used in the past few years. So this year we're actually going to try and clean it up a bit and hopefully be able to get all those level ups uploaded. I know we had the link somewhere for the previous level up sessions. I'll talk to the other exec members and make sure that we clearly communicate where all these are going to be.
Cool. Sounds
Oh,
good.
there we go. There's Maddie. Maddie, where are we posting the level up videos?
Oh, hi. What was that a question for me?
Yep.
Yep. Just in time.
Where are we posting
Our
level up
PR
videos?
chair. Yes.
They'll be on our YouTube channel. It's
Okay.
Computational Media at Georgia Tech
All right. Perfect.
is
That's
the
what I thought, and that's what I was saying, but I wanted to double check that.
Cool.
So, yes, the recording has started. It will be posted on the YouTube channel, so you can go back and watch it. Also, I'll just hold it up real quick. Did everyone get the link to this cheat sheet? That's going to be flipped, isn't it? Well, you can tell what it is. Does anyone not have that?
I don't.
Wait, sorry, what is that?
Okay. There's supposed to be a link to like a little cheat sheet. I'm sorry, my lights have a huge glare of just like hotkeys and stuff.
Can you send it in the chat?
Yeah.
I have the old physical versions from the last version of this level up, but it's a good resource.
Yeah. I'm not sure how many people are going to be following along because it's kind of hard to have Maya and like a video chat open at the same time. Um, but
This is why we
this really
record.
does come in handy. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So that is a link to this little cheat sheet. It's just like the basic hotkeys, stuff that really helps you like get started. Um, but yeah, okay. We've been goofing off for long enough. Let's go ahead and get started. So this is a intro to Maya level up. We're just going to be going over like the very basic interface and how to just get started with modeling. So you can go from not knowing anything at all to making a couple of simple models pretty quickly without focusing on all of like the little things that can kind of bog people down. So to start off with, is anyone following along like with Maya pulled up, or is everyone just kind of watching? Also, you can chat or like unmute yourself. I can see the chat. And if you just unmute yourself, I can hear you too. So, watching. Anyone else? Watching. Okay. Yeah, I figured. Okay, cool. All right, so that just lets me know that I won't need to like wait for anyone if they are having a problem. So we can just get through all this. Okay, so first up is this is what you should see when you first open Maya. You just have your 3D viewport right here with this grid on the bottom. This grid is on like the flat ground plane. So anything you build from here will go up. And this just is your viewport. So the first thing you want to do, and this is really important in Maya, is you want to make a new project. And so you do that by coming over to File, and then project window down here, and over to new. So we want to make a new project. Okay. So audio's choppy. It's probably my internet. Is it getting any better if I keep talking? Is it still bad? Okay, cool. Yeah, sorry. It's probably just my internet. Maybe I can turn my video off. I don't think that would help, but yeah, just let me know if it gets bad again and I'll see what I can do. So in case you guys missed that, you just oh, yeah, starting. Maya is a pretty chunky program, so whenever you're doing anything at the same time, it's probably going to mess with some stuff. So don't try to run too many other programs at the same time as Maya or it will crash. Um, so if anyone missed it, all I did was I went to File and then Project Window, and then I clicked the little New button over here. I named it Maya Demo, and I am putting it on my desktop, so you just pick a location, just like any other directory, and hit Accept. Now, unfortunately, that's not the only thing you have to do because you also have to set the project. And what this does is basically just tells Maya that this is the directory you're working out of, so whenever you save things, it'll automatically go back to there. Anytime you put like images to use for your textures, it'll all be kept in that one directory. So it's a really nice way to keep everything organized. So then I go down to Set Project and Maya Demo. So now our project is set. Whenever I save a scene, it'll automatically go into that folder. If I want to use any images, it'll automatically pull from those folders. So yeah, so now everything is nice and organized. And we have a default scene right here, which always happens when you open Maya. So just to show you, I'm just going to go up to New Scene. Not going to save this. And it's just a fresh new scene. So now we have this. And like with anything, you can just go to File and Save Scene and Save Scene As to save your scene. All right. So if you've never used a program that works in 3D space before, navigating can be a little tricky. The best thing you can use is a 3-button mouse. So just like an external mouse, it has the left and right buttons, and it also has the middle mouse wheel button, so you can click down on that, and that's the 3rd button. So first up is to rotate around the viewport. Oh, and the viewport is just this, where you see all of your objects in 3D space. So to rotate around the viewport, you hold down Alt and hold down the left mouse button, and then click and drag, and you can rotate around. You can see I'm just rotating. When you actually have objects there, it's a bit easier to see, but that's how you rotate. And then to pan, which is just moving the camera whichever way you want, you hold down Alt again, and you hold down the middle mouse button, so like clicking down the scroll wheel. And that can pan, so we have rotate, pan, both of those holding down Alt. And then to zoom, you can just use the scroll wheel in and out. That's the easiest way. All right, so since most people are just, they're not following along, they're just watching, I will say, take a few minutes just to like get the feeling of navigating like in your hands and in your muscle memory, because it can get kind of weird, especially when you start having a bunch of like little details you have to look at. So I would definitely just like take the time and get used to this, because it's definitely weird at first. All right, so one last thing is Maya has a bunch of different views you can use. They're kind of confusing at first, but once you get the hang of them, they're really, really useful. So this is the perspective view, meaning like it'll work in perspective space. So if you have an object close to you, it'll look really big. And if that same object is far away, it'll look pretty small. But we can also look into orthographic viewports, which don't have the same 3D space. They're only looking from a 2D window. So if I come over here to this little icon that has 4 squares, and I click that, we now have 4 different options we can choose from. The first one over here on the top right is the perspective viewport, so we can just go back there. And then we also have top, front, and side, and you can see really tiny. I'm not sure if it's going to show up well, but this one says top Y, so it's looking down through the Y axis, the green axis over here, and then front Z and side X, so it's just telling you which way it's oriented. And to switch between these, you just click on them and then press space. So I press space, and now we're back on perspective. Or I can come back and let's say I want a front view, click that, press space. Now I'm looking at my objects as if they were from the front. I'm just going to go back to perspective because this is probably what you'll be using the most. And then one last kind of viewport is Maya has a bunch of different tools, and they're kind of sorted into what you use them by. So up here, we have the shelf. That's what this kind of row of icons is. And we can go to a bunch of different sets of tools here. So like poly modeling is what we're going to be using today. That's for modeling polygons. Or animation, this is where you get your animation tools, rendering, FX, all of that. And then you can also go over here and there's entirely different viewports. So if I went to animation, then up here on the main toolbar, everything changes. So as you can probably start to see, Maya has a lot of different tools and you can find them in multiple different places, which is kind of annoying at first. But once you find which one you like to use and you incorporate it into your workflow, it's really easy. So if you want modeling, just make sure you're over here on the modeling viewport so you can have all of the right tools you need. Okay, I know that was kind of a long spiel about buttons and viewports. Does anyone have any questions? Oh, excuse me. All right, cool. We'll keep going. All right, let's start making some shapes. So, like I said, we're going to start with modeling polygons, which is just like the main form of modeling. You can have other kinds of shapes, but a polygon primitive is things like a sphere and a cube. It's like the very basic mathematical shapes. So the best way to do that is come up to Create up on the top toolbar, and then Polygon Primitives. And now I can go through any of these and just click one and it'll make it. So I'll start with the cube, and now I have a cube right there. So I can zoom in, use my navigation tools, look around it, and that's my cube. So I'll show you this in a second, but I'm just going to move it out of the way. Now what you can also do is, you've probably seen this, but up here on the shelf under poly modeling, we have all of these little icons too. And as you can probably guess, these also make polygon primitives. So the cube right here, cube icon, and it says polygon cube. If I click that, it does the exact same thing as going up to create. I'm not sure why they're both there. Again, tools in many different places. You can decide which one you like best, but it does the exact same thing. So I'll just move that out of the way. But one thing that's really annoying with that is when you make a polygon that way, it's just one size, it's the same typical default, and it's stuck in that same position, which means if you wanted something that's just moved a little bit or shaped a little bit differently, you have to make it first and then go back and change it, and it's just a whole extra step. So what I like to do and suggest people use is go up to Create, Polygon Primitives, and then come down to Interactive Creation. And I'm going to click that little checkbox. And I'm going to come back up to my cube. And what that does is, first it tells me to draw on the grid. I'll draw that. And then it says drag up to set height. So I'll drag up. And now I have my new cube, but with the dimensions that I just specified. So that's a lot easier way to, I can come down here and look straight on my graph and see where I need to place it, and it's just a whole lot easier to get the shape you want right from the get-go. Okay, so we have a question. How is Maya different from Blender? So if you're just looking to do simple 3D modeling, they're not super different. It's kind of just what workflow you prefer. The main difference is Maya is mostly for animation. If you wanted to get into like really serious 3D modeling, you'd probably want to use Autodesk's 3ds Max. That's their like modeling program. So Maya's really good with things like character animation or like really fine facial animation details, and Blender kind of does everything. Blender's definitely better at the modeling part than the animation part, but Blender also has a whole lot of visual effects stuff. They have the grease pencil for 2D animation. They have like their own built-in physics engine, and it's kind of like a game engine inside of a modeling program, so it has a whole lot more. And then it's also open source, so I'd say the tools are like a bit more, not user-friendly, but people can have more creativity with how it works, whereas Maya is the industry standard. So if you're wondering which one to learn, I'd say both, depending on what you want to do, but Maya is definitely better for animation, and Blender, I'd say, is better for modeling and then visual effects, if that answers your question. It's kind of a tricky one. Yeah, no problem. I would at least give both a try and see which one you like better, because it's kind of like the calculus versus statistics thing. Like, you're gonna like one of them better. But yeah, okay. So let's keep going. So I'm just gonna delete this big one. We don't need him. That one too. All right, so let's come into this cube. All right, so to select an object, you just click on it and you should get this green outline. So that's how you know it's selected. And now we're gonna come over here to this teeny tiny icon all the way up in the top right. I hope you guys can see it and it's not getting cut off, but it almost looks like a bunch of papers stacked on top of each other. And this is called the channel box. And what this is kind of like the 3D information for your object, like how it fits in the 3D space. So we've got our translate, rotate, and scale. So I can use this to like move it around. If I click and drag there, I can rotate. I can scale it in one direction, or I can hit Control and click to scale it up in all three directions. That didn't work. That also didn't work. But this is how you can go in and make really precise changes. So if I wanted one of my objects to be exactly at like 30 on the x-axis, you can go up here and set it, which is a lot easier than trying to click and drag. And the channel box will also have some other things once you start adding stuff to your objects. But right now it really just has kind of this information here. So this is really good if you want to have really like precise measurements. If you need things to like fit together perfectly, you come over here to the channel box. But what is more useful than that is the attribute box. So again, up here on these tiny little icons, the one in the middle is the attribute box. I don't even know what to say that icon looks like, but of this set of 5, it's the one in the middle. And then we're gonna go to Polycube 2. And it says 2 because this was the second cube I made. But Polycube 2, the one that just says poly and then the kind of shape it is the one that has all of the like internal information. So the rest of these are different things, like the kind of texture it uses and all that. But we're going to start with Polycube, and from here you can rename it, which is really good to do because you're not going to remember what Polycube 2 is when you start making more complicated models. So I'm just going to name it First Cube. And you can see up here on this tab, it changes that too, so when you're going through all of these attributes, you can find it really easily. From here, this is where we can start changing things as from the cube related to the cube as opposed to the cube related to the world. So what we can do is change the width, height, and depth like this, slide it. I can set it to a certain value, all of that. And this is different from the scale because this is setting like the cube's data, whereas scale would be saying make it this much bigger inside the world. They basically do the same thing, but I would work from the attribute box. It's just a little bit more precise, and it leads to less issues down the road. And then what's really interesting is the subdivisions. Now, this is where we start getting into how you actually model. So subdivisions are just taking your object and adding an extra line through it. So if I do subdivisions width, you can see I've got this line down in the middle, and I set it to 2, so now I've got 2 sections, just the left and right half. And I can do it on all 3 sides, and now I've got this cube divided up into what would be, I guess, 8 smaller cubes. And now we have more edges and vertices. Just a quick reminder about some basic geometry stuff. An edge is any of these lines. A vertex is where 2 lines cross, so any of these little points. And then a face is just the flat sections that are bordered by the edges and vertices. Right. And then what's really cool about this attribute box is each kind of primitive shape will have different attributes you can change. So one that's really fun is the cylinder. Make a cylinder real quick. I'll go to polycylinder. You should rename that, but for time's sake, I'll just skip it. And we can do things like subdivisions axis. So I can lower these and get less subdivisions up to the point where it's not even a cylinder, it's a triangular prism, but we only have 3 sides around it. So now we've got this really cool shape, and it was super easy to do that. Bring it back up. And then something like round cap, I can click that and it brings this extra point out. So right now, since it's just 1, it goes straight to a point, but if I do subdivision caps, it can round it out, and that's how we get like a pill-like shape. And you don't have to like take a cylinder and then take a sphere and cut it in half and then stick each half to the ends. You can think about how these different shapes and the different tricks that they have can get the shapes that you want. I'll just go ahead and delete that. Running a little bit behind, so I'm just going to keep going. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, I'll just keep going. And feel free to interrupt me if you do think of something. All right, so I'm going back to this cube that we have. Nice simple shape. And now that we know all of the data with our objects, we want to be able to start moving it and actually modeling. So to select it, you just click. It should show up green, and now we have it selected. So this is where the hotkey sheet comes in handy, because if you don't know these hotkeys, it's going to take you a lot longer to do all of this. But the selection tool is hotkey Q, and it's also over here. You can click on this little arrow right here, and it will bring up the selection tool, but it's a lot easier to just hit Q. And the selection tool, you can just click and select, and no widgets will pop up or anything. It'll just select the object. Next, if we move on to hotkey W, it's also this little button over here. This is the translate tool, or the move tool, which is how we move our object around. So we've got these 3 little arrows that pop up, and these are the 3 axes. So if I click an arrow and pull, it moves just on that axis, which is really great if, say, you had a piece of furniture on the ground and you wanted to move it over, but you didn't want to like lift it up or anything. What's nice about this is you also have these little squares that move along 2 axes at the same time. So like this will move on the X and Y, or Z and Y. This will move around the ground, and that moves that way. You can also click the center, and that's just a free move, but I wouldn't recommend doing that because you can't move an object in 3D space where you want from a 2D screen, if that makes sense. So you're never really going to know where it ends up. Okay, so then next, hotkey E is the rotation tool. And these hotkeys are just QWER along the top of your keyboard. But E is rotate, and we have the same thing. You can rotate along any axis, one at a time, or you can click in the middle and just kind of rotate all around. But again, I don't recommend doing that. And what's nice about the rotate tool is we have this blue circle. When I highlight it, it turns yellow. and that rotates on the plane you're looking at. So if I look at it from down here, it'll rotate around that way, or up here, it'll rotate around that way. So whatever direction you're looking from is the axis it will rotate around. And then lastly, hotkey R is the scale tool. And once again, we can scale in any direction along any axis. Or if you click in the middle on this blue little cube, you will scale everything at the same time. And this is one where doing everything at the same time is really useful because you don't want to change the shape of your object, you just want to change the size. You can do that. Okay. Are there any questions? Okay, cool. Sorry if this is going a little fast. I'm just going to go ahead and delete that. Zoom back out. All right. So now that we know how to make polygons, and we can essentially do that with any polygons, it's really important to keep track of them. So what we want to do is pull up what's called the outliner, and that just shows us the hierarchy of all of our objects. If you've ever used something like Unity, or really anything where you have object space, usually there's some kind of hierarchy where stuff can be parented to others, or you can just have a list of everything in the scene. And the way we do that is we go to Windows and then click Outliner, and it pops up just right over here. This stuff over here is just default stuff. We've got default lighting, and then the cameras from the different viewports I mentioned earlier, the top, side, and front, as well as the perspective. So this is just what we have on a blank scene. And now if I make a cube real quick, it pops over here as pcube1. That's kind of like our polycube1. That's just how it names things. I highly recommend renaming stuff. And you can do that by double-clicking on the object over here in the outliner and renaming it. I just called this big cube, and now make another one. As soon as I make it, it pops up. This one's now pcube1 since pcube1 was turned into big cube. And I'll name this little cube. So this is really nice if you have like a bunch of little tiny things in a scene and you can't quite see where stuff is. You can always come over here and find it in the outliner. And if you click it over here, you can see in my viewport, it's selecting them. And what's also really nice about this is you can get lost in 3D space pretty easily. So if I just take all of my stuff off the screen, even when I look around, it looks like there's nothing there. But if I select a big cube over in the outliner and hit F for frame, it brings me right back to where the cube is. So now I know where everything is. And even when you're right next to it, it'll frame up on it. So whatever is selected and you hit F, it'll take you to that, which is really nice if you're not quite sure where something is, or you just want to skip trying to wiggle around objects to get to the right frame and you want to go straight to what you're working on. And then over here, just like with any kind of selection, you can hold Control and click, and you can select multiple or deselect one. So if you had a bunch of different objects you wanted to select, you could go over here and hold Control and click whichever ones you wanted. Or in the scene, you can also do a marquee or like group select by clicking and dragging, and then anything in this square will get selected. So now let's say I hit W and use the Move tool. Now I can move all of my objects together if they're selected. And then one last thing that's really nice is you can make groups of things. So let's say I modeled a couch and my couch was done. All the couch parts to stay together instead of having to select all of them every time I wanted to move it over. So you can select everything you want. I'll just select these two cubes, and then you go up to Edit and Group. And this turns them into a group. So over here we have group 1. I'll just go ahead and double click and rename it to cubes. so it doesn't get confusing. And now we have this new little icon, which means group, and then this little icon next to it, which if we click it, it opens it up and we can see everything below it. So now the group, which its location is down here where the arrows are, but this group called cubes is the parent to big cube and little cube. So now if I just select cubes, I only have the parent selected, but everyone moves around because when you select the parent, you select everyone underneath. So groups are a really, really good way to stay organized. I highly recommend using them in the outliner because if you make anything more complicated than just a couple of objects, it can get really confusing really fast if you don't use groups. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and delete these guys. Group. And let's get on to the real modeling. Are there any questions? I know, especially like just watching and not really following along probably seems like a lot, but again, this is recorded, and once you start and just like get used to a couple things, it really is pretty simple to pick up. My blue jeans is telling me I'm having network issues. Okay, if you do anything, just let me know. How did I learn Maya and how long did it take? So I first learned Maya by doing the LinkedIn Learning like bootcamp, essential training. Yeah, that's what it's called, with George Maestri. I think I did the 2017 one, maybe 2018. No, it had to have been 2017. But I did that whole thing in like a week. And then I had to start teaching Maya for my job at the library. So I kind of just like put myself through boot camp and learned it in like a couple weeks. And then I had to use it for 2730 because we were using it in that class too. And it just kind of stuck. I know a lot of people struggle with learning it. I'm not sure how I picked it up that fast. If it makes you feel better, it's taken me like 2 years to learn Blender. But I'm not sure if other people work this way, but when I learn something new, I have to do it for like a couple hours every day, and then it'll just kind of like stick. And then once that happens, everything else is a lot easier to pick up in that program. I'm not sure if that would work for you, but yeah. Don't feel bad though if it takes you a while to pick up. It's super hard, super weird, and it just works differently for everyone. Okay, so I've got this new cube. I'm going to go back to Polycube 1, and I'm going to give us some subdivisions. We'll do 4. Now we've got some nice subdivisions. You can see our cube is all split up into these different sections. And what modeling really is taking these components of a shape, the edges, faces, and vertices, and changing them. So what we can do is just like with our objects, using the move, rotate, and scale tools, we can do that with the individual pieces too. So I have my object selected. I'm going to hold right click, and up here on this little pie chart, we have edge, vertex, and face, and then object mode. Object mode is just like what we've been in, where you can just select the whole object. But I'm going to go into face mode, and I'm just holding down right click and dragging down and releasing on face. So now when I hover over the shape, you can see I can select the different faces. And if I press W, where I already have it on, I've got my move tool on, so if I move this out, that face moves out. And then I can move it to the side, and now it moves that way too. And then I can also hit R, hotkey for scale, and scale it up. So now we've got this crazy shape that looks like a whole shape stuck to this cube. There's like some weird warping and stuff happening, but all of that was made just by changing one of these faces. So I'll hold a right click, and let's do edge this time. And just like with faces, I can grab one of these, select it, and pull it up. I can do this one. So I hope you can start to see how just by taking a basic cube and doing some weird stuff to it, especially with these subdivisions, you can start to already get completely different shapes that don't look anything like the original primitive. You can also hold down Shift and click a bunch of different edges. It might be kind of hard to see, but they turn orange when they're selected. So I've got these 2 rows selected by holding Shift, and now I can pull that up, and it pulls all of those edges up. Or I can click that one, maybe click that one, and pull them back down, and it does both of those at the same time. So if you wanted something where, I don't know, let's say you wanted the entire side of a cube to be like skewed off to the side, you can go through and select all of them, and then it will just move everything at once. I'm not sure if you guys can hear that, but my dog is crying at me. She wants attention. Sorry about that. I hope she doesn't start barking. But yeah, that is edges. And now, lastly, I can... Sorry, I clicked the wrong hotkey. That's why that was being weird. I'm so sorry. I hope you guys can't hear this dog. So I'm holding right click and I'm going into Vertex, and now it pulls up all these little points showing our vertices. So just like with everything else, I can select one and pull it up, and now we have a spike. I can also I'm sorry. I would pick her up and show you guys, but she's also very not cooperative and would probably flip my computer over. But yeah, you can also click and drag, and that selects all of them. They turn yellow when they're selected, and then I can just move them out like that. Okay. Also, something that really causes problems is if you're trying to do something and you're not in object mode. So after I've done all this stuff, after I have this crazy shape, make sure you hold right click and go back into object mode. And now I can move my object around just like one solid piece. Okay, are there any questions? I'll move on into a quick demo, just to show you guys some techniques, but does anyone have anything they wanted to learn that I can cover real quick? I'm gonna show you guys how to add color, especially to different parts. We're gonna do a little pencil demo, but did anyone have any topics that they just wanted to learn real quick? Right. I'll take that as a no. And then hopefully this should go pretty quickly. And then if there's any questions at the end or anything you guys might want some help with, I can do that too. All right, so I'm going to be demoing a pencil. I'm going to go a little quicker than I usually do since it seems like most people aren't following along. But I really like doing this demo because it combines a handful of different modeling techniques as well as that kind of like thinking outside the box that you need for modeling. So first what I'm going to do is pick the primitive shape that is most like a pencil, and that is a cylinder. So I will start with this. Now I'll go up into the channel box, and I want it lying down on its side, so I'm going to pick, I think, the X rotation, give that a 90 degree, and now we've got it on the side. For this one, I am going to use the channel box and type in 90 because I want it to be perfectly flat on the ground, but then if I wanted to rotate it this way so it's perfectly perpendicular with our view, I can just click and rotate. And now I'm going to move it down a little bit just so it's kind of on the ground. All right. So this is not quite pencil shaped. Pencils are usually not this short and fat, so I'm going to go into the scale tool, and I want to scale it just around the circle, so I'm going to grab this green square and scale it down that way. So about that much. So you can see that when I have the scale tool pulled up, this green square is the one that's parallel with the circle of the cylinder. So that's the one I use to shrink and grow the center. And now I'll also grab this green side, and that looks about right. Okay. So the first thing about a pencil is they're usually not totally round. If you're going with like good old yellow number 2 pencil, they're usually hexagonal. So to make it 6-sided around, I'm going to change subdivision axis to 6. And already we have what looks much closer to the shape of an actual pencil by getting rid of all of those extra subdivisions. So now what I'm going to do is hold right click and go into Vertex Mode. And to bring the point of this pencil out, I'm going to grab that vertex in the middle. And I'm glad I did this because I can show you a pretty big mistake. So one thing that is really tricky about working in the 3D space like this is the relative rotations of things. So you can see I'm pulling this out straight along the pencil to make the pencil point, but you can see none of these arrows point straight out this way. They're all like off at different angles, and that's because I rotated the pencil, not when I rotated it from standing up to lying down, but when I rotated it more towards the camera. That threw off the world space, so be mindful of that. This is why you usually want to like model things before you start fitting them into your world. So I'm just gonna eyeball it. I don't recommend doing this. Probably gonna be a little off, but with something very geometric like this, you usually want to use pretty precise translations, and it'll make it look a lot better, but we'll just do this for now. Okay, go back into object mode. So this is already looking like a pretty good pencil, but, and this might be kind of rushed, we're running out of time here, but let's go ahead and add some color to it. I'm going to skip some of the finer details to show you guys how to add colors to things. But what you can do is just add color to the whole pencil, but I think we should take it one step further and add a couple different colors. And what's really nice about that is you can add colors to just certain faces of an object, and it'll be the same process as doing a whole object. So I'm going to show you guys just different faces, and then to add it to the whole object, you just do the same thing. So what I'm going to do is right click on this object and go into edge mode. And you can see I can select these edges, and I'm just kind of on the back end of the pencil over here. And now what I'm going to do is go up into I have totally forgotten where this hotkey is. Okay. So it's in Mesh Tools. We've got 3 different mesh buttons up here, and it doesn't make any sense which one is where. So Mesh Tools, and then Insert Edge Loop. And what an edge loop is it's just edges connected front to back all the way around an object. So it makes like a loop around the object and closes itself. So when I click Create Edge Loop, I can click and drag along the edge, and you can see this green dotted line. and that's showing where the new edge will be. So I'm just going to make a little eraser bit and let go, and now you can see I've got this new edge right here, and along with that, new faces. I'm just going to do it again, one more time, bring it out a little bit this way. Go back into object mode, and now you can see these new edges. And what's really nice about that is now we have separate faces for different color. So I'm going to start with the middle part because that's going to be, actually no, I'll start with the eraser. So I'm going to go back into face mode, and I'm just going to click and drag over these faces. That's not face mode. I'm not sure what's happening here. Something with my edge loop keeps getting stuck. You guys can see it keeps trying to make more edge loops instead of going into face mode, which is really annoying. Well, I'm not sure what's up with that. Okay, we'll just make this all one color then, especially because I'm running out of time. So I'm just going to make this yellow. And the way you add colors to things is you come up to the shelf up here and go to rendering. And in rendering, we've got all of these gray bubbles, and those are different materials. And a texture is basically like the color and the image you put on something, and a material is things like the shininess, how it reflects light in the 3D space, and all of that stuff. So with my object selected in object mode, I'm going to come up here to the center bubble that says Lambert material. And Lambert is just a plain matte material. It doesn't have any shine or anything to it. And it pops up in my attribute box. So I've got Lambert 2 up here. Lambert 1 is the default like gray material. Never mess with Lambert 1 or everything you make will end up being like a color with its own details and stuff. So always make sure you're using at least Lambert 2. And again, you can rename it to something. And then all I do is come down here to color and pick a color. So I'll just pick nice pencil-y yellow. There we go. It didn't work. And for some reason, it's not taking my color. I'm not sure what's going on with my Maya today, you guys. I'm very sorry. But it should have shown up as yellow. Oh, there we go. Okay. I'm not sure why that wasn't working. Let's make that a little bit of a prettier color. There we go. So now I have my color all over my object. And to do that with faces, you do the same thing. You just select the faces you want to be a certain color and then go up and you can select any of these. Lambert's just the matte one, but some of these are shiny. Anthiotropic is like, it's shiny but on like a line. So instead of having a point light, it has like a line that looks really good for things like vases or anything round. And then you just add it to those faces the same way you would do a normal object. All right, sorry for getting kind of rushed there at the end. I'm not used to teaching this in only an hour. But yeah, that is Maya. Very basic ideas, how to start with polygons, changing them, adding them, and using some good organization, and then adding colors. Does anyone have any questions? Yeah, you do, but the way, if you guys don't see the chat, Jody asked if you have to deselect edge loop. You do, but the way I used to do it was just going back into object mode. And I'm not sure why this isn't working now. So, yeah. This is my first time using Maya 2020. I downloaded it a while ago, and then I never used it for anything. So they might have changed something. But yeah, I don't know what's up with that. There's a way to do it. There's gotta be, like, but yeah. So if anyone has an answer to that, then please let me know, because I'm not sure why mine's being weird. Okay, any more questions? All right. Well, if there's no more questions, that's all I have for you guys. Again, sorry it was a little bit rushed. But yeah, play around with Maya. You can get it for free with that link I put in the chat and that hotkey cheat sheet. And that's really all you need to get started. Great. Thank you guys so much for coming. There's a bunch more level ups this semester if you want to learn some more topics. And yeah. All right. Bye, everyone.